Hi, everyone. Welcome back to True Disabled Story. My name is Nico, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man with parted blonde hair, large blue and brown spectacles, and a particularly loud pink and dark floral shirt. I'm seated indoors in front of a purple wall and some bookcases. That's my home office. Like about 25% of the US, a full 20% of the global population, and a full 17% of Philadelphia's population, I'm disabled. Uh, whether I have completely lost the plot here. Whoops. Whether we look locally, nationally, or globally, disabled communities are full of dynamic, diverse, and frankly delightful people with their own stories to tell. All we have to do is listen. As many of you know, I was born with my disability. I've never known differently, and since there's only about 2,000 of us worldwide with my condition, I probably always will be disabled. But in my work, in my civic life, I've come into contact with other disabled people with their own stories to tell, and I am naturally quite curious. Today, I'm joined by my friend Sheri, and I can't wait to see or hear what Sheri tells us. Hi, Sheri. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Nico. Thanks for asking me to be here. So I am Sheri Byrne-Haber. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a middle-aged white woman who wears bifocals with brown hair in a ponytail because I am at my archery range in Palo Alto, California.
Before I began recording, Sheri and I were exchanging memories of things that we do and how archery has played a role in both of our lives. Fantastic. Sheri, thanks again. What was your path to diagnosis like? Was it out of the blue, a total surprise, or was it something maybe you were actively pursuing? Paint that picture for us.
Sure. So I was born with spina bifida. I've had a mobility disability my entire life. But I tell people that the wheelchair to me is just a way of getting around. My true disability is I developed what they called latent autoimmune diabetes of adulthood, or LADA, which means I developed what they used to call juvenile diabetes, but I developed it as an adult. So it was very rare. It took them forever to figure out. In fact, I diagnosed myself, and that particular diagnosis did come out of the blue.
Fantastic, thank you. Indeed, I've not heard of LADA before, so I appreciate you telling me a little bit about it. I want to give you space to do maybe even more of that. What impact have your diagnoses had on your life? And you could take this socially, academically, professionally, however you wish. I'm just interested in that more comprehensive picture.
Well, some people say that autoimmune diagnoses are like peanuts. You can't eat just one. So I now have four of them.
Sure.
The type 1 diabetes diagnosis was the first. It has, the reason why I say that that's my diabetes is my true disability is because it impacts absolutely everything I do. If I get sick, if I'm in pain, if I'm stressed, if I'm, which sometimes results in stress eating, everything I do every day, it will affect my insulin calculations.
Valid. Thank you. So what is a typical day like for you then?
So one of the things I've had to get really strict about is waking up at the same time. I don't get a sleep in anymore because my insulin requirements for breakfast are very different at 6:30 in the morning than they are at 8:30 in the morning. So even on weekends, I will need to get up early in order to work around that. I tend to eat a high protein breakfast. Again, carbs, I can handle them. I'm in the afternoon, I can drink a can of Coke, no problem. But if I don't get things exactly right for breakfast, it can really mess up the rest of my day. I have an insulin pump. I've had it since about 3 months after I was diagnosed. Not the same one. I'm on like insulin pump number 5 right now because you get a new one every 4 years. And so that does make it easier because I don't have to sneak off into a bathroom to do a shot, outside of the sight of other people. I'm gonna switch hands here because I'm right-handed. So this is my insulin pump. It's, attached to my waistband, and I just look at what I'm eating, calculate in am I sick? Am I in pain? Did I just exercise? Is it morning? Is it evening? Is it high fat combined with carbs, which has a different insulin profile? And then I, punch the numbers in, and, we're off to the races.
Sheri, thank you so much. And I actually really appreciate you showing your insulin pump and talking more about how this impacts your daily life.
What's really a nuisance is at business events, because at business events, we are not always expected to wear clothing that has waistbands. So sometimes I will have to go to the restroom to get the insulin pump, which, is attached underneath my dress or what have you, or I have a couple of suit jackets where I run the tubing through the pocket. So I've actually had the clothing altered, both from the wheelchair use, so that, I'm not getting my skirts constantly dragging in my wheels, but also so that I have better access to the insulin pump.
It's fantastic to hear that you've been able to modify your clothing. This is an aspect of life that I hadn't really considered, so I appreciate you expanding my perspective. Sheri, if you could go back in time somehow through like some technology we've not yet discovered and could advise your younger self, what piece of advice would you give to help navigate life with LADA?
That's an interesting question. So children who are diagnosed with type 1, their diets are enforced by their parents, and so they grow up eating a particular way. They never drink Coke with sugar because they're only ever given Diet Coke. Whereas when you develop type 1 as an adult, you've already kind of set in your ways, and so it does make it more complicated. So I would say the one thing that I wished I had done was to be more of an advocate with my physicians, because they weren't looking for the zebra, right? They were looking for the horse. And so it took them 9 months to diagnose me. By the time I was diagnosed, so a normal average blood sugar, we use a measurement called a hemoglobin A1C. Normal is 6, okay? Diabetics are allowed to be 7. Okay. My number when I was finally diagnosed was 26. And so I had a substantial amount of nerve damage as a result of having those extraordinarily high blood sugars for a really long time. So I think that would be one thing that I would wish that I could go back differently and say, you guys need to figure this out. There is something clearly wrong with me.
Totally understandable. I can't imagine how scary or confusing it must have been to navigate this journey without any answers until you come up with it yourself, you mentioned. So
yeah, it's funny enough. So I have a daughter who has a congenital kidney problem.
Okay.
And so we have these urine test strips. We had them in our house all the time growing up because she had to test her urine periodically. And so I thought I had a urinary tract infection. And so I, took one of her strips to test my urine to see if there were white cells, because that was one of the things that it would tell you. And the glucose spot turned black. And I thought, oh, well, the test strips must be bad. And so then I went and got my daughter and said, look, I need you to do this. And she's like, I did this already last week. And I'm like, no, I really need you to do this. She was about 10 or 11 at the time. And hers was fine. And I'm like, the light bulb went on, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I've figured it out. And so I contacted the doctors and said, this is what I think is going on, and went in and did the official lab work. And they originally said, oh, well, you must be type 2 because you're way too old to be a type 1. And so they started treating me with medications for type 2 diabetics, and then contacted me when the special lab work came back from Stanford and said, oh, you know what, you're just an old juvenile. I think the scariest thing about it wasn't wasn't the disease itself. It was that I was a single mom. And so I was worried, okay, well, you know what, if something happens to me, what happens to my kids? And so that part definitely far and away was the most difficult aspect of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so forthcoming. I'm glad that you were able to diagnose yourself, and thank God for urine test strips is a sentence I never
Exactly.
thought I would say. All right, friend. As we close our time together, Sheri, I want to thank you again for broadening my perspective and helping to educate me and whoever eventually watches this about life with late onset diabetes. I want to give you a chance that I give everybody, regardless of project that I talk to. Where can people find you online if you live online or you want, or you're open to making connections? Or otherwise, you could just share one recent win about your life, any cool thing you have going on. This is just your chance to promote yourself. So please tell us all about you.
No problem. So I am most frequently found on LinkedIn. My last name is Byrne and then hyphen Haber. So I'm not difficult to find. There's not too many people with that last name. And I love to connect with people, and I've got a big accessibility, because that's the field I work in, is digital accessibility. I have a big digital accessibility blog on Button Down.
Fantastic. Sheri Byrne-Haber, thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Shoot straight.
Thanks.
All right.